Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Medical Main Street's, welcome to Automation Alley. Thank you for the kind introduction. I am a 30-year civil servant. I have been a patent examiner in the biotechnology area for 30 years. I matriculated to Detroit 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, and came to the USPTO office in Detroit. How many people are aware of the fact that the United States Patent and Trademark Office is in Detroit? Okay, that's great to see. That's great to see. So those of you who didn't raise your hand, if you're ever asked that question now, you can raise your hand too. We are in this environment seeking to provide as much assistance as we possibly can for intellectual property matters. Trademark, patent, we will discuss copyrights with you and trade secrets as well. We are here to provide a resource. It's paid for. You pay your taxes. We are ready and available to provide you with all level of assistance with regard to intellectual property. Okay, the commercial is over. All right. Emerging technologies are creating a transformative opportunity for healthcare providers and life science firms, and scientific achievements are on a record pace. The geopolitical climate is ushering in a new era led by the passage of tax reform in the United States and ongoing healthcare reform. In addition to embracing these changes, providers and life science companies are looking for ways to meet the coming opportunities and challenges. Forward-thinking organizations will be building. They will be building an adaptive organization for the future. They will be building a culture of courage to help counter uncertainty. They will be building integrity, maximizing the value of data, building patient trust and centricity, the value of across the journey of care, and building a smart, cross-functional regulatory approach. And in order to grow, these organizations will need to continue to look for new partnerships and operating models. Alliances and partnerships will be particularly important for accessing external expertise and technology. And technology companies, both large and small, are already poised to disrupt the industry. Today we have assembled some of the region's top executives and in healthcare. We would like to explore the impact of technology and innovation on their institutions. I'm going to start out by posing a question that I'd like each one of you to take a couple of minutes to wade into, get your feet wet. Let's be comfortable. Let's let this be a free-flowing dialogue that allows our audience to obtain the benefit of your experience and your knowledge and your vision. Okay? What's included in your sniff test of new technologies?
Oh, you're looking at me.
I am looking at you. One of the things that I'd like you to do is to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're from, and then you can go to the question.
All righty, sniff test. I must be highly qualified. My name is Jennifer Dugarski. I am from Fuzza Lawn. I'm an emerging technology lawyer, otherwise known as a recovery engineer. I spent, don't hold it against me. Where's yet? I spent 15 years in the auto industry. So how I end up here is an interesting story you can ask me later. But it has given me an opportunity to sniff a lot of technologies. And to me, what passes or doesn't pass the smell test really starts even before the technology truly is in a point where you can actually necessarily see it, touch it, taste it, or apply it. The smell test for me is, do you know what you have? So many people I talk with don't understand the scope of what their technology is. They don't understand what they own. And again, putting the attorney hat on, those intellectual property rights that we were just talking about, know that you may have trade secrets that go with the use of your technology. You may have an awesome brand name that should be trademarked, or you have something that could be patented, or even something that is a work that could be protected by copyright. So my smell test is understanding whether the innovator, you as a technologist, understand the scope of what you have.
Intellectual property, the creations of your mind. So, so those are the things that this panel will discuss. These are the important issues that we need to start focusing upon with regard to having an understanding of how we're going to deal with these things in the future.
My name is Yusuf Hai with CIG Capital Advisors. I'm a managing director there in the business advisory services area. We work on helping companies, businesses grow their practices, build their businesses from scratch. Work with attorneys to patent technologies, to commercialize, and so on and so forth. So from our perspective, the sniff test has a few different components. One is obviously the legal component, the patent component that have experts that are surrounded by literally right here. The other couple components to think about from our perspective is obviously the actual efficacy of the technology. So, how much value does it really create? Does it create value? So there's, depending on the type of technology, if it's more scientific, we'll lean on our scientific advisory board to kind of do analysis on that area. But then the third component that's equally important is, how viable is this to commercialize and to build and to monetize, if you will, and make sure you could pay your bills as you build what you're building. So those are some of the key components that we look at and think about as we look at the technologies.
Good morning, I'm Peter Robinson with Mecial. I am the Capital Director and I'm over all purchase services and anything non-medical. And I work with all of the clinical areas as well. So for Beaumont, I would say the sniff test would be, we have to look at the evidence-based data, right? I'm supply chain, so we got to make sure we're keeping our costs down, but we still got to bring that innovative technology to the hospital. So evidence-based data, physician and clinical input, because we have to get that input to go along with bringing any type of new technology within the health system. And then we got to look at the financial impact as well as the clinical benefit. So we got to look at those factors. So from the hospital side, those are the things that we look at. That's our sniff test.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Zayden. I founded a company called Women's Healthcare Associates. We turned it into Women's Excellence 10 or 12 years ago. We grew it now to 5 different locations, and I'm the standard OBGYN physician. But more importantly, I'm a daily learner. I see patients every day, still do surgery 2 or 3 times a week. And what I realized that the sniff test is for us is, does it work? And can I get any of the providers in my office that help me in my practice actually adopt it? Because it's great to talk about these informations, it's great to pass these solutions, it's great to have things that cost a lot of money with reps that come bring them into our offices. But the question is, will our providers even accept it? Even when it's done through capitalistic sources like sales reps that want to bring their product in, many times our providers won't spend the time with them. And so we need to determine from a sniff test perspective is this something that we're going to gather enough support from our physicians and our mid-level providers to actually make a difference for patients. Because I'm on the bottom of the food chain, right? So we, as a physician, we're kind of at the bottom, everything trickles down to us. The truth of the matter is we're the ones that are actually enacting all the care. I always say, to people, I say, okay, well, you need my signature, right? So everything else can happen, but they need our signature to do it. Our sniff test is, can we do it as providers? Is it efficient? And will people continue to utilize it?
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to start with you, Jonathan. And my next question is, what are the barriers, the biggest barriers that you see to introducing new technologies within the healthcare industry?
We want to communicate with patients. As a physician, my number one goal is to talk to a patient and have them understand. The problem is that we can't always get the information out there because we have HIPAA laws and we have time constraints. And we have a million barriers to how patients understand what we actually want to provide them information on. Think about it. I was actually talking to someone this morning, and we're talking a little bit about how we do, how we display information on our website. And she gave me this story. I thought I'd share it with you. She said when she was pregnant, just 3 or 4 months ago, she would oftentimes get the labs first, and then she would see any abnormalities in her labs and all those things. And then, what she thought was pretty efficient, within 24 hours, she would get a message from the physician, and it would say, the labs are all normal. The problem was the labs that she got weren't always normal. Sometimes they had L's and H's next to them, and as a patient, you have no idea what that means to you. What does that mean to your pregnancy? If your hemoglobin is high, it's a little bit low. But the doctor goes and puts in, let's just tell them that everything's normal. That spearheads a lot of questions. So the biggest barriers are how do we push information to our patients so that they understand it, much like we would do in a more verbal sense as opposed to a written sense. Because anything that's in writing, patients dwell on it. And our job is to make sure that if we put something in writing, it's put there in a way that they understand it better. They ask less questions outside of that interaction. Because remember, a pushed message to a patient is an interaction, right? And so if we can communicate better in the way we push information to them, I think we'll be far more efficient. And that's our biggest barrier, right? Is how do we communicate?
I pose that question, what do you see as some of the biggest barriers?
Sure. So from my perspective, from a business strategy investment perspective, there's a ton of innovation happening out there in the marketplace. I'm sure many of you are responsible for creating some of that innovation. Some of you are interacting and seeing that innovation come to be. The challenge tends to be to filter out and rise to the top. So, you have something that really has patent worthiness, because there's a lot of talk out there and a lot of even, approaches that you might even take. So what's your documentation and validity of what you're building? And then beyond that, networking is a big part of it. And that's why we appreciate Medical Main Street and Automation Alley for bringing these types of gatherings together, because we know that some of the smartest people in the world come up with the most brilliant things, but if they don't talk to the right people, if they don't connect with the patent attorney's office and the legal counsel office and the business strategist components of it, they can't take the market, and it won't be viable, and it won't make it. So, one of what we see as a barrier is just not enough communication in the marketplace with all these different parties like we have here today.
Kenya?
So I would say some of our biggest barriers are, as a healthcare organization, standardization. So we're forced to standardize, and with our group purchasing organization that we partner with, our compliance. So trying to break that, to bring in new things outside of, what we are standardized today is one of the biggest barriers. So, and it has a lot to do with cost, because we're definitely trying to reduce costs, but then we're trying to bring in new technology. So it's kind of, one, we're trying to reduce, but we're trying to bring in more things. And do they have like the capital budgets to bring these things in? You only give them a certain amount of dollars. So you have, coming from supply chain, you have to replace routine equipment, but you bring in new technology. Because one of the things that we focus on is bringing that, that extraordinary care every day for Beaumont, and we need that with new technology. But those are some of our barriers: standardization, cost, compliance. Those are the biggest things that I see.
Okay, so I want to follow up with another question, because you said standardization. When something is so new and so innovative that there's nothing else like it, how then do you establish a standard, or what serves as the foundation of a standard when something is as innovative as innovation making? Something is as innovative as such that there is nothing else like it. Do you come into contact with those types of things, or are the innovations just different levels in different arenas that we already exist in?
So I think we do encounter that we'll have things that we want to bring in the hospital, new innovative things. So it has to be a percentage that you have opened, if you're going to bring in some type of new technology. So our compliance may be 80% and 20% we can bring through the door to look at, but we gotta establish a business case. What are the benefits? Why are we doing this? How it's going to help patients? How is it going to improve patient care and for better outcomes? So those are some of the things, we get infection control involved. Will it help with that? Reduce some of the things that's happening on the hospital side. So you got to establish a business case of why you want to bring the technology in and how it's going to help the patient population overall.
There's the business case, but Jennifer, I'm going to come to you now, and I'm going to ask about the legal aspect. What are the barriers that you see besides someone who doesn't understand intellectual property and the complexities of patents and trademarks themselves? What are some of the barriers that you see?
Oh, there's a lot more. How many of you are ready for me to say the words regulatory and compliance? They're fun words, and there is an issue there. And to go back to what you said, the notion of standards in the legal realm, I mean, we do have regulation. There are things on the books. But James, as to your question of how do you deal with things that are so new that we don't know how to regulate them, how do we handle this? I mean, we're in that brave new world today. And just think, who gets spam email on a regular basis? Anybody? Everybody. The first way that people thought to try to fight that in the legal channels, this is back in the 90s, I mean, not that long ago, 1996, 97, was to go back to a 13th century law called trespass to chattels. Basically, it stemmed out of this case where a bunch of guys flushed a whole bunch of ducks into a big duck pond. And that's the case that really led to us fighting spam email. I mean, it's ridiculous. Sometimes you have to open a new box and think outside the box. So dealing with it is, number one, you have to be flexible. Number two, keep your eye out on the regulations. Number three, start planning ahead for a changing regulatory environment, and thank things that are the way they are, because right now we're being very tech agnostic, which I think is a wonderful thing. We're not picking winners. We're not picking loser technology. I think the way that the last three administrations, and I expect that this one will continue not to pick winners or losers in the tech race. But to be honest, I see one other thing beyond the legal that's truly an answer to one of the biggest barriers, and that's understanding your revenue stream. Who are you selling to? Who is going to actually be able to pay for the technology that you're developing? I've got who represent a client, and I've done some work on this matter where they came up with an awesome chip, an awesome sensor and chipset that would be able to live monitor, provide updates to some sort of a device, and really didn't know to whom they were going to sell it. And it really started an outstanding adventure, and when they finally figured out, well, this should be a wearable technology. So that at least started them on their journey to try to find a way to create revenue. And I'm sure I'll tell you more about those guys later.
Well, Jennifer, I'm going to stick with you, and I'm going to ask you a specific question that's directed to your profession. What would be on the entrepreneur's radar as far as attractiveness of the innovation to a potential buyer or supplier? What should you be thinking about now? What should we be thinking about now?
Well, let's stick with that example. Let's take that sensor technology. What these guys understood that made them so talented an organization is that they knew what they had, and they were willing to think outside the box in the application. They had medical technology. They had something that would sense certain biometric rhythms. It was biometric data processing and collection process. But they were willing to think outside the box. And the first place that they sold it to was a company that dealt with high-performance athletes. And they put it in sports bras and that type of technology, so high-performance athletes could get some of that biofeedback, raise their game. But they didn't stop there. They continued to think outside the box and what other avenues they could go to. Right now, the automotive industry is looking at integrating that technology into seat belts. So, what I think from the standpoint of understanding your, once you understand your IP, again, that's really the foundation, knowing what you have, knowing what, if you have something that's patentable, if you have branding that's trademarkable, if you have works that are copyright protectable, or if you have those 11 herbs and spices, 12 herbs and spices, or how many other fancy herbs and spices there are, if you've got the secret formula to Coca-Cola, you have your trade secret. Once you know you have that, knowing to whom you can sell it, and not thinking really insulated, because right now there is totally a synergy where everything is coming together. IoT, automotive, media, technology, and healthcare. It's all crossover. So understanding alternative outputs is very important once you understand kind of those basics. I mean, I can tell you, please know your compliance, but I mean, that's a given these days, right? That's how to think outside the box. Take it to the next level.
Did y'all get that? Wow. I almost want to clap.
I'll close on this thought. Dr. Philip Hesberg from Henry Ford had a great, I wish I could have said this myself. Autonomous technology, driverless cars. They have hundreds of sensors on these vehicles to make sure they don't crash into things. His comment was, give me 12 sensors inside the car and I will revolutionize healthcare. Think outside the box.
Okay, and I am trying to think outside the box, and I keep hearing everyone in Detroit talk about autonomous vehicles, and what I want to do is walk out of my house, go to a pad, and there's a drone, some type of drone device there that I can step into, and it'll pick me up and take me to the airport and drop me at the drone pad, and I don't have to deal with traffic. I don't have to worry about autonomous vehicles on the road.
Not bad idea.
I think you're going to have to go through some regulatory.
Although it would be awesome if we could have Jonathan have, exams and checkups, right in your transport if you're going from one place to the next.
Or if that were the way that doctors made their way to patients in out-of-the-way places and the like. So,
Well, I think we're already on that.
no? Okay. Kenya, I have a specific question for you that I'd like to pose. How do you promote innovation and creativity in an environment that's dominated by a culture of regulation, standardization, and compliance?
So coming from the supply chain side, all those things are true. So, every year we're given where we got to reduce costs, right? We got to take 13 million, I think it was last year out of our supply budget, 18 million this year. So how do you bring in things that's new in this environment? So what we did at Beaumont, in order to bring some of this new technology in, we have value analysis teams. We have several of them, from cardiac to ortho to spine, cardiology, imaging, clinical products. So we use those teams that's comprised of physicians, clinicians, IT, supply chain, materials management, administration. So we use those teams for them to bring forth ideas, and then we vet those things through, and after we see the clinical benefit, then that's how we can bring in some of the innovation to the hospital. But we got to get a cross sector of the organization so everybody's on the same page, so we can bring some of these things in to help promote these better outcomes. So that's one of the ways. Then we also have another system, which some suppliers may be aware of. We have a MetaProof. So the suppliers work with the clinical folks, and if they see something they want to bring into the hospital, they would go through a MetaProof process. And it comes through to supply chain, and we all work together and look at it, and we determine if this is something that we should be bringing into the hospital. So those are some of the ways that we're doing to try to bring in some of this innovation in a world where we know we got to constantly reduce costs, and we know we got to be standard and compliant, but at the same time, we still got to get these, our next patients are the millennials. We got to bring them in, and they're all about the technology. So we have to have those things for them to come to our hospital.
Jonathan, you're up. What technology or innovation recently adopted by your organization has had the greatest impact on costs or outcomes?
I'd say if there were one, it would be our live chat. We put live chat on our website recently, and I think that was probably the best thing we ever did. I think they did 127 chats the other day, and we're, I think, about 2 months into that. So if you think about, I think that an average call volumes that we got in the office was somewhere around 600 to 700 calls per day throughout the organization. And we took away a quarter of them by one person with a live chat. That in itself, I think, is a cost savings, right? But it's also way more convenient. So if you're at your desk and you want to confirm your appointment or just get a little piece of information about your prescription, where is it at in the process, wherever, and you're talking to an OBGYN, you don't want to do that in front of other people, you may want to do that in front of any males, you want some privacy, and you can just live chat in the corner of your screen, and they'll give you the information. If not real time, they'll get the information and then get back with you right away, and they'll confirm which way you want them to get back. So it's actually convenient for you, because how many times do we leave a message on somebody's home machine, which are now truncated because we don't know that your husband's not going to get them for you, so you really can't get you any information on that in that vehicle. So I think if there's one thing, that function. It's simple, but so was the iPhone. We combined 3 technologies and made a great device, right? And so the other thing, I think, is what we're developing, and that is we're developing a new portal to our website, and the whole website is going to be called My Advantage. And the reason we're doing it is because of Carlene and what I talked about before. We need to communicate to people better. So you'll have one login that will seamlessly interact with your EMR. So your electronic medical record will push data to us, and we'll push that data to our website, which means that you can log in and get every piece of information that you need for your health care. And you can even log in maybe your mom's health care and so on and so forth. You can utilize all those location information forms, and surrogate forms, and all those things. And what it'll ultimately do, I think, is save people a lot of time, and it'll allow people to use medicine better. And the third phase of our rollout, we're in the midst of developing 2. So we're in the midst of integrating the electronic medical record and all your labs, images, patient visits, summaries, and all that to the website. But phase number 3, which we're also developing, but will be our last release, is you'll be able to communicate to the doctor on that website via telemedicine. So right now, probably each and every one of you have heard something about telemedicine. Talk to a doc on the phone. The only problem with that is that the doctor on the phone doesn't always know anything about your medical history. So they do a very, very abbreviated medical history and try to give you that little snippet of diagnosis and then maybe some treatment or maybe some advice to move forward. Ours will be seamless, so you'll be in your own chart. So if we want to refer you to something, you have dual monitors, you'll be able to actually look at your chart and what we're referring to. So I can say, let's take a look at your ultrasound, and here's your ultrasound. Push that ultrasound to your second screen, maybe even on your mobile phone, right? And then talk to you about your ultrasound via telemedicine. That's utilizing technology. Right now, I don't think we're doing that in healthcare very well. I think we have a lot of fragmented systems. I want to integrate those systems so that we can communicate better to our patients. I went into medicine so that I could be a doctor to communicate with patients. And unfortunately, the system, that's our biggest barrier to care, like I said earlier. So I think that would be one of the
So I asked this question. Usually I would have to come into the office to get this information, and I would probably have to pay a copay or something along those lines. Is this an innovation that actually provides a savings to the customer? Is the customer going to be able to have this interaction with you and with your office and it not come at a financial cost?
There will be a financial cost, the same as you would have if you had an office visit. But imagine the impact of that cost on you as a person, because you may have to take half a day off of work to go to that doctor's visit. You may have to incur costs, depending on your socioeconomic status, of driving a certain amount of distance to see a specialist. Right? And all of those things cost, right? You may have to have someone bring you if you're not a driving age. There's a lot of cost savings for your patient to be able to communicate, as long as they can communicate with information that's relevant to them. Because what I see, and I've actually tried some of these systems out there, I don't want to name them, but I've tried them as a demo patient, and basically what they've done is referred to me. So, you know, I mean, when it was all said and done, they had a visit and referred back to me the next day. And that's not, I don't think, what telehealth really is designed to do. Correct?
Yes.
Sir.
What are the commercialization aspects that need to be considered in creating an innovation or an innovative technology?
I think we've talked about a lot of the components here, but to highlight a few, I mean, I think something that Netta mentioned earlier, and even Dr. Zevan mentioned it about adaptability. So as you come up with different innovations, recently we were working on a project where our client had a brilliant solution, but we knew the adaptability of it would be very challenging at a large scale early on. So what we actually did is we actually watered down the solution, if you will, to something that we knew could be easier to grasp for the popular masses, such that we can build some momentum, and then as that's adapted, we can kind of create a gradual flow to a full solution. So, that's just one thing to keep in mind, because sometimes when you try to go from 0 to 100, you lose the people, and it's critical to have them all along. So you have to kind of make it bite-sized, if you will, for them to move along. So I think that's critical. And then within that, Jennifer mentioned, revenue streams. Where do they come from? How do they come? What's your market size? Who are you targeting? Again, you have to be careful. If you have great solutions, sometimes you get so inundated with opportunities, you try to go in 20 different directions and you don't make enough traction in any, and the whole thing falls apart. Whereas maybe you identify and prioritize which are the key markets to focus on. How are you going to target them? How are you going to market to them? How are you going to get in front of them? How are you going to have them adapt, highlight, show efficacy along the way, and then build up? So we're big believers in trying to do things gradually. Obviously, we want to see the hockey stick as much as we can. But even within that, those early few steps, where you go, what you do, how you charge, how you get in the front door, are all critical to success typically of the innovation.
Are we going on time? We're good. I'm going to ask another question, number 5. Who do you see as the biggest catalyst for healthcare innovation? I'm going to let you fight for it.
I think that's a simple answer. If I can jump in.
Go for it.
Is the people, the masses, society, because our GDP is growing and healthcare is disproportionately growing even faster. And it's the $1 trillion question now, right? How are we going to solve it? We talk about innovation, all these ideas, communication at the base, forefront on the ground is so critical. We have so many pieces that could work, that have different costs, have different values, but what's the solution that's really going to get healthcare to be effective and affordable and appropriate long term? So to me, that's the biggest catalyst, and there's so many layers to that.
I think they drive it, but are they actually the catalyst? I think they drive it, absolutely. The end user and the consumer actually drives it, but do they actually provide the catalyst? Are they knowledgeable enough to know what specific things or in what direction the industry needs to go in order for us to consider it to be a catalyst?
It's a fair question, and I think, one of the things that have happened over the past few years, that I would say has led to them driving it more, is what you've seen happen in the insurance market and with healthcare insurance and Medicare, and now the onus being, from a financial perspective, more on people. So healthcare is becoming much more like a typical consumer play, where you have high deductible plans, the patients are paying more out of pocket, they care more how easily can they access their doctor and get a quick response, how much time do they have to take off of work, how efficient is it, how many dollars are they paying for even just customer service. So if they have to call and wait on hold for 10 minutes to make an appointment, you know what? 10, 15 years ago when the healthcare plans were pushing you to a doctor and there's next to little to pay for it, you might stand for it. But now when you're, out of pocket's going up, I think you have much more of a say. But that's not to say that's the only.
Jennifer, I mean.
Yeah, I'll get in on this. I think you're right, that they're driving kind of the need and the want. But I think there's a lot of companies that stand in between that are truly kind of being the catalyst in some of the examples that I'm thinking of. Oil filters. I mean, I know I'm going back to car guys again. Oil filter company decided to expand their avenue a little bit. They're getting into air filtration in the home and in the office. I've done 2 or 3 deals with these guys recently where they have acquired health technology companies who are doing particulate monitoring and kind of that type of occupational health related technology. Now they're being bought up by a company again that makes oil filters for cars. And I saw at CES, I was so happy to walk in, and a deal that I had just closed a year before, there's that technology sitting at CES talking about how workplace health can be improved through this particulate monitoring system that was in a deal done with an auto parts company and healthcare technology companies. So I see the catalyst being that outside the box relationship that we're seeing more of today. And that's even true in telehealth. I work with one of our local area hospices, and they have just gotten into a telehospice system and partnering with some amazing technology companies to try to facilitate, be HIPAA compliant and do things the right way. I mean, I see the synergy of companies that do different things coming together, using the technology for the greater good of the people to try to improve health outcomes across the board in novel ways.
Jonathan?
I agree with you. It's smaller companies that ultimately become bigger companies. I do a lot of work with something called endometriosis, which causes women pelvic pain. And we have medical and some minimal invasive surgical modalities to treat it, not to mention major surgery. And our mainstay of that therapy was laparoscopy. It still is today for diagnosis. But now for treatment of endometriosis, I almost always choose robotic surgery. And that was a small company, Intuitive Medical, that was not well capitalized early on, and now is a right? And they have reps at every case. There's a sales rep there. Capital is reps, right? So small companies that can move and be nimble and modify their product quickly are the ones I think that are going to drive most of the innovation.
So I agree with everyone on the panel. I see that it is our suppliers partnering with the healthcare institution. They're going to be the catalyst for that healthcare, the innovation. I'm just thinking about, we worked on a huge project last year that's still going on, is centralized telemetry. So in order for us, we had to partner with someone to do that. IT has to be a part of that. And so now we're going to be like the largest institution that has, that monitors patients centralized. So coming up with some of those innovations, thinking outside of the box, I think the catalyst is going to be the healthcare institution with the supplier. I mean, I think it's got to be a partnership.
Okay. What are we missing? What on a doctor's wish list for advancing innovation, what are we missing? What might a company want to hear from an attorney, from a commercialization investment individual, from the supply side and the supply chain and from an actual physician. What are we missing? What is it that we can tell them that they haven't heard yet, or something that they can leave here and say, I went to this event on, what's it? Wednesday. I went to this event on Wednesday and it was outstanding. And I was able to take away X. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to provide that X. What is that unknown that you want the audience to know, or the audience to hear, that they can take with them, that would allow them the opportunity to say, yeah, that was right on point. That was something that we needed to hear. This has realigned my thought process, or given me a different vision, or awakened something in my mind and in my heart and in my spirit that I can take back to my company, or that I can be a better leader, or I can think on a different level or on a different plane. Wow. That's a pretty tall order, but I'm going to let you weigh in at your leisure.
I'll be less than profound. Get a whiteboard. I mean, tactics. I'm going to give you a tactic. Go back, get a whiteboard. Hopefully it's a nice big one and not do this, erase a picture, Draw it in half. Take one half and think about, what do I have? Draw it out. Put little circles. I own a X. Okay, I've got a chip. I've got a medical technology. Whatever that is, define it. Flow out, what are all the aspects of it? My gosh, I've got a brand. I've got my manuals. I've got how to use it. I've got how I manufacture it. Put all of those things that you have, whether they're tangible or not. You may have it up in your head, but you may be able to write it down. Put that down. So you now know what you've got. Go to the other side and think, who wants what I have? It sounds simple, it sounds stupid, but when's the last time you've done that? Who wants, or who could use what I have? Is it directly provided? Is it, list everyone out. And again, go beyond what we normally think. Do the car guys want it? Do the drone people want it? Does the media want it? Who would be interested in what I have? Think outside the box. Then you've got this huge spaghetti chart. Sit back and reflect on that, because that could help drive new revenue streams, new exit strategies, new sales opportunities.
Yeah, and I think as Jennifer spoke, I think the key components within that kind of a parallel is always about thinking about value creation. So whatever it is, wherever whether you're a physician, whether you're a supplier, what can you do to create more value? And sometimes it's the simplest things, and we know what we struggle with and what you struggle with, or what the network you're involved with struggles with. If you can just pinpoint simple value creation points and build off that and build some momentum, it's a very powerful way to build business, but you can almost always do it if you're truly creating value for someone in that chain.
To create the value creation and the whiteboard and all that, you still need a physician champion, a clinical champion, and to bring those ideas to my side of the organization. And you have to work with, in this healthcare today, you have to work with supply chain. We find a lot of times it's not the good old days where you go to a physician office and you bring in product. Since we have compliance standardization, there's processes, regulations that you have to follow. So one of the biggest things, you need a champion, someone who's going to help you bring forth your ideas to them.
X equals personalization. Right? Everything we're talking about is designed to push to a person. And we lose that in healthcare all the time. I'm saying the same thing over and over again because that's the message as a physician that I should give. In that we are so concerned with how much it's going to cost and how much value. And there's a lot of great people out there that are designing those infrastructure. But the number one thing I think we need to think about in any innovative technology is the person and how are they going to get it. The perfect example is what we were talking about, or what I talked about earlier, with the electronic medical record. If it pushes the data to you, then somebody did their job. The problem is if the data doesn't make any sense to you, it adds a lot of complexity in your life. We need to become more personal proponents for the healthcare system. And I think it should start with the physicians, but it also needs to start, like when I'm doing something in our office, I ask the medical assistants, how will this affect you? I ask my partners, how will that affect you? I ask my midwives, how will that work on labor and delivery? Try to get all of that information. And when we do, and I might ask them in pieces, and they don't always know that why I'm asking. Because I want to get real candid responses. I don't want them going home, sitting in front of a desk and being all nervous to tell me. I want them to tell me, how will this affect? First response, because that's the response that the patients are going to get. Think about whatever device or product or anything that you're going to dole out to the masses. Think about how they're going to actually experience it. How is it going to be personal to them? Is it going to tell them an allergy alert, for example? You know, is there for people that are asthmatic? Is it going to send them a small notification? You know, those types of things. How is that going to happen? I think right now we have all these great ideas, but it's not very personal.
Whiteboard, value, partnering, personalization. All of those are huge components to a foundation that can be shaken, reshaped, and built upon. At this time, I think that it's a great time with that information shared to ask the audience, do you have questions? Would you like to query these incredible individuals? I have learned a lot today. I've been in intellectual property for 30 years, and I've learned some things that I think that I will take back. And I might have a question after. Yes, sir.
Y'all are awesome. Thank you very much. I'm in the digital health space, and there's dementia and Alzheimer's and aging in general are costing this country hundreds of millions of dollars. Personalization is missing from treatment support, care support, and taking into the caregivers. 40% of caregivers get depression. It's an awful model right now. And I'm just wondering what you all see as the big gap or need or things you see as helpful to help that particular audience. It's on its own $1 trillion problem.
I would say making the care more convenient. I think, you know, part of the problem with healthcare is that it's very emotional. So you can't make decisions for all. You have to make them for one. But it has to be convenient. I mean, today is different. Somebody mentioned that, and we were to use that said, you know, healthcare is different today because people can't take off work or those types of things. And I agree completely. I mean, you know, for dementia care, I mean, how do you get these people to be examined? Do they even need to be examined at some point? I mean, what's the end goal? Are all those things really taken into account? I'm not so sure that they are. I think there's a lot of different ideas on how to do them, but I'm not so sure they're intertwined into the care plan per se, right? I mean, is it really necessary for somebody to have a pap smear if they aren't necessarily going to be resuscitated? You know, these types of things. I mean, you know, these are things that we have to think about. So I guess that making it more convenient and making it more commonsensical, because we've lost some of that.
And I think integrating some of the thoughts that we had earlier is kind of important. Last week was Ann Arbor Tech Track, and I was up at one of the pitch pits that they were doing up at Design Incubator. And one of the technologies really incorporated several of the things we were talking about today. To Jonathan's point, it dealt with personalization, working towards the caregiver's perspective, but it was partnering. Vignette was talking about it was partnering with the providers and the hospital systems to provide for those who were involved in elder care. So this is from the caregiver's perspective, a potential platform that would allow for the collection of EPOAs, basically, you know, your living will, all of your medical directives, your advanced directives, and it would all be in a system that would go resident in the hospital system itself. So as you shift from traditional care to palliative care to hospice care, you would have all of these records put together so that the poor people who are in the caregiver role could do it once and not have to panic about dealing with just the simple medical records, legal records from that standpoint. So it's integration, what truly will help at the end of the day with the partnering to get the right connections and looking at the value stream. And I know these guys have seen their way to work.
Something that I'd like to add is we have a new generation of workers, a new generation of future leaders, and they have to be, we need to bring to their attention these types of matters, because these are the things that they need to start working on. They have a different approach to computers and personalization and the like. And if young college students and graduate students and those who are new to the workforce aren't apprised of and plugged into this type of concern. If I owned a business, I'd be looking for young people who loved old people. I'd be looking for young people who were concerned about who's going to take care of me. I would be looking for people who are interested in seeing changes in healthcare, young people. And I think that one of the things, everybody in this room is pretty well apprised of what's going on in the industry right now. But I don't think that we're doing a good job of letting college students know and young people know exactly what we need right now. Because it's going to change, and it's going to morph, and it's going to change so rapidly before us that by the time they've gotten around to doing what we think is what needs to be done, something else is going to need to be done.
Great discussion. I was curious as to if, with the whole Theranos thing that had been going on recently, if it shifted how you evaluate, think of investing in, or if you're like Beaumont, a big health system, how you approach these companies that are coming to you with the next best thing, if it shifted your thinking at all, or if it's just kind of like a one-off thing. And I was curious as to, with the whole Theranos thing that went on, if it shifted your thinking, if you're investing in a company or advising a company, or if you're Beaumont and you're like, I see these innovative companies coming in, it seems like this is the next best thing. Are we a little more wary as Beaumont is Walgreens, I think, was an investor and they kind of got burned. If it has factored into judgment, or if it's just kind of like, oh, this is kind of like a one-off thing, it's just kind of like bad apple type.
Well, I think from a perspective that we are looking at those things, and no, we're not just saying this is one-off, because it's more likely we will be a trend. So we are looking at those things, and as an institution, I know today we have we're the biggest hospital system for the net revenue in Southeast Michigan. So we're looking at things that how can we grow as a system still, even outside of maybe Southeast Michigan. So we don't take those things lightly, and we are looking at to make sure that we are, like what we're talking about today, that we are looking at innovation and things that improve. So.
And just to add to that,
Typically just need a physician champion for these things.
We do.
I mean, in order to bring something out, they need some, group of doctors, or one doctor, or someone to champion a new innovative strategy or technology or device or whatever before, an institution will, ultimately, quote unquote, buy it. Right? Before you're going to implement it or adopt it, you need to know that you have people that are going to utilize it.
Yes, so you're absolutely right. We definitely need to champion it, because we wouldn't go out and buy something unless we have other organizations on board, our administration, and, everyone within the healthcare organization to make sure that is the best decision for Beaumont. So it is making sure everybody in the organization is on board, vetting it out, making sure we're going in the right direction.
Just to add to that, though, I mean, I think it definitely does raise the awareness. I mean, there are those, I mean, my guess is there'll be other things like that do happen. That's just, what happens with innovation and capitalization, right? I mean, the capital markets, people are always trying to monetize things, and you have to be careful, and that's where diligence, legal review, regulatory review is critical. But even then, I mean, our systems are not perfect, so it's going to happen, but you just have to, it's one of those things you have to find balance with innovation and managing risk, and you're going to probably have some bills in the future even, but you just have to do as much diligence as appropriate that, taking into consideration the cost benefit analysis and is the risk worth it, and have you done enough diligence, have you gotten enough third party analysis to kind of sign off on, which they did all that, right, but it still happens. So I mean, it can still happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again, but hopefully we learn and get better.
Okay, so how do I penetrate the medical market if I am automotive and I don't have a doctor's champion? So for instance, it's a Microsoft-based product and it's something that we very, very much value, but I don't have anyone in your industry, a specialist. How would I be able to, make a business argument or proposal to go on or any hospital or someplace else to be cross-functional and legal and all the regulations for my industry?
So to answer your question, a few years ago, we were having a big issue with plastics. And so we actually went outside the automotive industry and we brought in some vendors from the automotive industry that would help us with our plastics. But we are looking outside of just healthcare for different, it depends on, the product line, obviously.
Right.
But we're not just set with just healthcare suppliers. So that's one instance I know for sure that we did look at automotive level because they are experts in
Plastics, yeah, they are.
And again, as you mentioned earlier, I mean, that's, I applaud the industry automation, how they bring it together, because I think these are the places where you can start those conversations, whether it's with a physician, someone in the health system, an attorney, a business advisor, because networking is a big part. It's who can you get in front of, how do you figure out the steps and processes, and again, you have to somehow find your way to the top of this, huge momentum that's happening in innovation. So.
And Lisa's definitely right, there's no understating the power of events like this and networking opportunities.
And actually taking advantage of the opportunity to network, to have a conversation with someone from Automation Alley and somebody from Medical Main Street to see whether or not there are technologies that might be able to be enhanced. There may be some catalyst for you to work with someone in the medical industry based off of a technology that you have, because you went back to your place of business and you got a whiteboard and you did mark it out and you did draw arrows and lines, and you were able to see that there might be some application of something that you control and that is yours that could have medical implications.
Thank you very much for being here. This is a great session. We're a town-medicine company, and what I find in local Michigan, we have deal with the hospitals and things like that. We service 1 million lives in Pakistan. What I see with the bigger organizations, when we come in, it's quality versus cost, and it's the opposite. If we're not charging a lot, we can't be good. We're a local company that has 15 employees. We see big hospital units here going to California, paying 5, 6, 7 times the amount because the facility there is on Big Sur and they're on the stock market. So you feel, boy, you got to pay a lot because if you don't charge a lot, you can't be good. So it sometimes gets hard to get through the wall to come in and say, we have the same thing, we can prove it, and then somewhere, instead of the medical community saying, well, this is a good product, it's administration that says, it can't be good, we need to pay more. So that's what we see in Michigan, local, and trying to get into big organizations, and we have dealt with them before and know and things, and we are in some of the local areas, but when it comes to the very top to get to that big layer, it's always boy, can they be that good if they're charging that low? So that's what we see.
It's a challenge, and I think that's pretty much basic sales and marketing and pricing strategies, right? I mean, you're right, you have to be careful, it's a fine balance. Sometimes you charge the right amount in the sense that it's creating more value than you're actually charging, but people think, oh, it's too expensive and we don't have dollars for that. Or it's so little, you scare them off the thing. So it's a fine balance, and again, it comes back to networking, the type of people you're doing business with, who's on the other side, knowing their personality types, and understanding what's going to work for them. Because you might have an amazing technology that some people will pay top dollar for, and if you price it too low, yeah, they'll walk away. And you might have the opposite, people that, oh, that seems really interesting, but it's way too expensive, I'm not going to invest in that. If it was much cheaper, I'd do it. So I don't think there's a perfect answer, but it's an art, I think, to maybe there's science to it, there's definitely art to it as well.
And if there's any consolation, a lot of us probably face something very similar from a standpoint of legal marketing. We deal the same way. You know, you're from Detroit. You're you know, how can you be as good as somebody who's from New York that I'm going to pay 3 times as much for? So price point and talking to business valuation guys and talking about pricing, you know, is very, very important. But knowing what you've done, what your capabilities are, to be able to talk about what you truly can deliver, some evidence-based statistics will really help to bolster your right to charge the prices that are competitive enough to keep you in the race.
Stay positive. I work for an agency that doesn't charge for information, and people are skeptical every time I come before them to say, it doesn't come. You can come to my office and you can sit down and we'll talk to you about intellectual property, and they look at you and they're like, okay, there's got to be a catch. There's got to be a catch. And there are people who won't come. And they're like, if I come in there, they're going to get my social security number, they're going to know how many children I have, they're going to have my address, they're going to know my license number. I mean, so I feel your pain, and I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think that you've got great advice. I think marketing and having the statistics to show, which is what I have to use. I depend on showing who are the stakeholders that I reach and that I touch, and what has been the value. Now, the other thing is trying to get the people who you do service to make sure that they are telling others that you are as good and that you can provide and that you are an excellent business and that others should do business with you and save money.
That's what I was going to say, because I know a lot of times we go to references to see if we're looking at someone. It's interesting that you say it's too low. It's coming from a supply chain perspective. We're always trying, quality, of course, but we're always trying to get the lowest cost. So we're trying to have quality, so that's very interesting. But it's those references, because we truly depend on other folks, evidence-based for sure, and other folks to tell us, how good your product is.
And there's always, recently we're working on a project with a home healthcare business where, they're trying to come up with an innovative model for home healthcare where they were willing to take the risk with their physicians and an ACO, accountable care organization. And, they have a solution, a proposed solution and a model that they want to try out. And then it came down to, okay, how are you going to split this cost saving? Is it more important what the innovation the home healthcare company is doing or the physician practice is bringing? Is that 50-50 split, or who gets 25, who gets 75? And again, there's no, obviously you need the patient to use the innovation, but you need the innovation along with the patient. So there's always this back and forth, and a lot of it has to do with who you're talking with and their perspective on it. Because at the end of the day, you won't convince someone that believes that their value is so much more that it's not, and to take a risk sometimes. So you just have to be conscious of it.
You have all been extremely encouraging this morning, and I'm sure everyone in the room appreciates it. But there have been historic barriers to entry to the healthcare space. One example is 20 years old this year. It is from Germany. It's called BEMER, B-E-M-E-R. Any of you heard of it?
Yes.
How many BEMER people have here? All right. All right. Well, what's interesting about the reaction from this audience in particular is that only 3 or 4 years this technology has been in the United States. It is a fabulous, relatively inexpensive, broadly applicable, and it's home-based potentially, healthcare device. And literally, it encourages the body to heal itself. Now, hospitals in particular. There's a hospital in Budapest that has an entire section for Beamer applicants, and it is incredibly inexpensive because no pharmaceuticals, no surgical applications. It simply drives oxygen so the body can heal itself. How is it that Beamer has not been able to enter officially the U.S. healthcare space after 20 years of proofs and developments?
You said it. Pharmaceuticals, there are no pharmaceuticals. You answered the question. The people who control, drive, and lord over the healthcare system in the United States will stop you from being able to bring in cheaper technologies, innovative technologies that can put them out of business. So initially, for me, the first thing was you said, well, it's great and it doesn't use pharmaceuticals. I am a pharmaceutical chemist. I've been doing pharmaceuticals for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office for 30 years. And to hear you say pharmaceuticals aren't needed, my hands started sweating. So I can only imagine what a pharmaceutical company might be.
Very reason, though, that the hospital groups, the larger or the more successful ones, really needs to evaluate this because if you're ever talking seriously about cost cutting or the specific application, this really needs to be evaluated by the big boys and developers.
But it's a huge challenge, and I would say I'm not sure they'll ever do it if government's not involved. I mean, that's when regulation comes into play. I mean, and I don't know the answer. I'm not a big government guy necessarily, but there's a place for intervention to say, look, we need to adapt technologies. But it comes back to capital markets to the degree it's capitalism, right? That's what this country's been built on. I don't want to get too political, but you have to create the case, and if it's as great as it sounds it is, and you can start introducing it to enough people and you get it big enough, there's probably money to be had if it's successful on the other end. Now it's going to take away from other pockets, and that's the challenge, and that's the world we live in.
I feel there's a new program under the CMS Medicare Medication to embrace new innovations like this that truly lower costs, improve outcomes, and they're doing grants through ACOs
Yeah.
to partner with people and support the savings. So there is a funding vehicle now that's probably a few years old.
Yeah, and it's not preventing, it'll take time. That's why I think what I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in the small baby steps and gradualism, because the overnight change is just too much going against you sometimes. I mean, if you have a solution that's going to take out or reduce the financial markets for health systems and pharmaceuticals, those are big boys to go up against. So it's going to be tough to do it.
But look at what you just did, Mr. Proctor. You just filled this room with your intelligence and told everybody about me. And so now look at how many more people will go and Google that when they get to their cars and start looking that up. I mean, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Kevin Hamilton, and I'm Enterprises. I'm familiar with Beamer, but it makes me think about the guy who created the hydrogen fuel years ago. To your point, it's competition. My question is probably a little redundant. First of all, I want to thank you for this platform and this demo capability. Very, very innovative from my perspective, but this may be a little redundant, but as it pertains to references and getting new product services in front of the medical community, I'm a believer in asking the same question over again because you might get a new answer. The digging deeper why. I think about a company called Ring.com, who went through for, you know, the sharks. They rejected it, and then when we're in front of decision makers and we're trying to present something new, a new product or service, and there are no references, what do you want to hear to make you look a little deeper? Because I'm sure all those sharks at that table wish, man, how did I miss that? Because they all rejected it.
So we make us dig deeper, and it's got to be some evidence base. We have to have that, showing that there's going to be something that's going to improve patient outcomes. What is it that you have? What evidence do you have that you're going to improve patient outcomes? Because that's what we go on. And our major Beaumont is patient family-centered care. So if you have something that's going to help to improve outcomes, then we're going to listen, but we need some evidence to make sure that is true indeed.
And let me share with you that there is no substitution for passion. If you bring a passionate plea or a passionate discussion to decision makers, your passion alone elevates the status of what it is that you bring. Because nobody wants to pay attention to something that is brought to them. I guess this my mother used to always tell me, you're bringing me a gourmet argument on a trash can top. So I'm not going to pay attention. I hear the good parts, but you're giving it to me wrong. Your stance is wrong, your position is wrong, your approach is wrong. So I would encourage you, if you, and maybe the idea is yours, but you're not the person to pitch it. Maybe you need someone who can sell it for you. You know what I'm saying? So for me, everything that I do is evidence-based. Everything that I do with regard to patents and intellectual property. But when an attorney comes into my office and sits down with me to discuss what I've said about the invention, that this isn't anything new, and they come in and they start picking out individual points that they want me to focus in on, there have to be these precious little diamonds sprinkled in your argument that sparkle, that get my attention, that cause me to look at it a different way.
And I'd go back to what I mentioned a little earlier. I mean, it depends who you're talking to. You know, you're talking to someone like him, and data metrics are huge. You're talking to a multi-billionaire that has a lot of money and likes fishing, you're on a boat trip with him and just likes you. But, you know, so it depends who you're talking to. I mean, we know Bill Gates had trouble raising money in the beginning. I mean, you know, was it his fault? Was it the people he was talking to? I mean, it just doesn't. So it's all circumstances. You know, having multiple bites at the apple, going after multiple players, being strategic, prioritizing, having a plan that you think has the highest probability of success, and going at it.
I would like to refer to the commercialization of non-pharmaceutical technology, like yoga. Yoga doesn't cost anything, but it is being commercialized and people are making money on it. So this is one of the examples.
One more question, and then we'll break for that. Behind you, sir. Behind here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for your comments this morning. David Weaver with Fairlinks Angels. Can you hear me? Okay, we're raising a fine here shortly, but I have some observations, and part of it goes back to some comments that Jennifer made earlier. It sounds like some technology being developed is developing without knowing the problem. And if you develop a solution, now you have to look for the problem that matches doing that a lot of best efforts. I think you need to understand you're developing technology, get in the trenches and find out what the problems are that need to be solved. And talk to those folks so you can direct the research there. Because if you build a platform, you think it's done, and now you start matching with your problems, you have to retweak it. You probably missed a lot of the opportunities if you spend too much time early on chasing just developing the technology and not matching it. Observation on getting technology into the marketplace is that oftentimes, the team that starts the technology does not have good advisors, business people, and help them make the right business decisions. I see some companies fail just because of bad business decisions. Other companies don't match it with the kind of capital to take it to market. Jonathan, in the case of yourself, about 15 years ago, I consulted a company that was developing a laparoscope, adding confocal microscopy to it, so they would go variant cysts and see the pathology of that at the cellular level, and help decide if that needed to be taken out, which is customary if you're uncertain what's going on, or you can leave the place because it's benign. But they ran out of funding because the investors were not experienced in the device space with the regulatory rules and time frames to get things done. So you need to match it to the right kind of funding from the management team to get things out. So it goes back to you, you just have to comment on your experience seeing this as well.
All right, so that was our last question. We will hang around, and I think that you will have an opportunity to do some networking. Where do we go from here? There are many resources available for whichever phase your business is in. Through Medical Main Street, Medical Main Street aims to educate, inform, and advise stakeholders, policymakers, and the general public on critical issues facing the health, technology, and care sectors, and the industry's impact on the U.S. economy and society. We would, on behalf of Main Street, I'd like to thank you for coming out, for indulging this incredible panel. I'd like to thank the panelists for taking time out of their schedules and not making it robbery to come out and to share. And I hope that everyone will have an amazing day. What's that? I turn this over to Medical Main Street.